Hey guys, so today we are going to talk about the economics. Economics is basically, how things are run in terms of buying and selling and all those types of things at Jamestown. Okay, so we had already put these terms, these are economic terms. Economic means money, basically, into our notebooks a while back, but we're going to talk more about them now, okay, and trying to find other examples of how they're the same, they're different, and how they were at Jamestown able to come up with some pretty clever ideas of how to use money or currency, okay, because they used tobacco as money, okay, or currency. So the reason that they used the tobacco is because tobacco was what we call a cash crop. Okay, it completely transforms life in Virginia. Okay, it encouraged slavery. So tobacco is using as cash crop. It's basically, you got to think about it like this. Okay, um, if money did grow on trees, because think about it, the tobacco was used as money. Okay, so if there was a money tree, wouldn't you think that you would want to plant as many money trees as you could so you'd have as much money? But what if I told you that to plant and take care of the money tree, it takes a lot of work. Okay, a lot of hard labor to make sure that that money tree is able to survive. What if I told you that you could go out and find somebody to do it for you, and you don't even have to pay them because they're slaves? So you're going to be able to grow money as much as you want, and you are going to have other people do it for you because it's so hard, and you don't have to pay them. Now you can see why slavery came to Virginia, and you can see why tobacco was such an important piece to the economy in Jamestown. So before we even get into the tobacco, you can see here on the computer, it's talking about agriculture and how agriculture was important to Virginia. Basically, agriculture is farming. Okay, you could be farming food in terms of apples, plants, any type of plants is agriculture. Okay, but also raising animals is also agriculture. Okay, so you can see that having pigs is agriculture. Wheat, chickens. Okay, this is corn, and then you have here tobacco. So agriculture, all of these things were the main source of wealth. However, this one, okay, the tobacco, was the cash crop. Okay, meaning it brought in the most money, it was worth the most money. So if you had a choice between all of these, you would try to be a tobacco farmer. Okay, became the most profitable agricultural product by far. Tobacco was sold in England. Okay, and not only was it sold in England and they get money from Englanders, it was a cash crop, and that is that to sell for money rather than for use by the growers. Okay, because if you're a farmer and if you're growing things as a farmer, but you're only growing enough for your family to survive, to eat, you're growing corn or whatever, it's not a cash crop. You're not doing it to make money. You're doing it to survive. What these people did is that they weren't growing tobacco to survive. Okay, they weren't. You can't eat the tobacco. They were growing the tobacco to make money. Okay, and to become rich, and the rich that they did. Here are two videos that I'm going to show you about tobacco and how important it really was to the colony. I'm going to show this one
first. It is not surprising that Jamestown almost failed, not only because of illness and starvation, but because no gold had been discovered, and because the colonists hadn't found any good ways of making a living. But just when they were the most discouraged, new people came from England, and they settled on healthier lands where they could farm. The Jamestown colonists were led for many years by this man, Captain John Smith. He was an excellent governor as well as an explorer and mapmaker. Smith put the upper-class colonists to work. He kept everyone from starving by buying corn from the Native Americans, and also by learning how they hunted animals for food. One day, while John Smith was out exploring, he was captured and threatened with death by warriors from an unfriendly tribe, only to be saved by the chief's daughter, Pocahontas. Later, she married one of the colonists and began dressing like an Englishwoman. Her husband, a plantation owner named John Rolfe, had worked for years developing a mild, sweet kind of tobacco. The English settlers in Virginia started raising lots of tobacco plants, and they grew quite well. After the leaves were harvested and dried, the tobacco was shipped off to Europe, where the dangerous habit of smoking was just becoming popular. As the years passed, tobacco farming brought the colony great prosperity. In 1619, the people of Jamestown elected an assembly of men called the House of Burgesses to make laws for their growing colony. That turned out to be a very important year, because it was the beginning of representative government in America. Unfortunately, 1619 was important for another reason as well. It was the year the first African slaves were sold to Virginia tobacco planters by a Dutch trader. After that, thousands of more slaves were put to work in the colony's plantations, and this allowed their owners to live in fantastic luxury. By the outbreak of the Revolutionary War, a powerful society of large plantation owners controlled the colonial legislature in Virginia. Two of the most famous of these Virginia gentlemen were George Washington, who maintained his beautiful plantation of Mount Vernon alongside the Potomac River, and Thomas Jefferson, whose grand plantation called Monticello stood far to the west in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Both plantations had hundreds of slaves.
I mean, that's how they made their money, with the tobacco. It was making the money, the cash crop. They wanted to make money and have these things. So they would grow it and they would sell it. And they needed slaves to do that. Okay, there's another video I want to show you, but first I do want to share one other thing with you that the video talked about, and that was the importance of this man. Okay, his name was John Rolfe, R-O-L-F-E. Okay, so tobacco had been there for a while. Okay, 1607 people were still using pipes or whatever, but what ended up happening is the tobacco was native to Virginia. It was a harsh type of tobacco. So what it would do is that when you would smoke it, it was not pleasurable to smoke. Okay, it made you cough really bad. It was just harsh. Okay, the smoke was dark and black. So what happened is in 1616, okay, John Rolfe came and started growing a sweet scented crop of tobacco from seeds that he had gotten from the Caribbean. Remember, when they came to the New World, they would come to the Caribbean first, then up the coast. So he got some tobacco seeds from the Caribbean, plants them into Virginia, and finds out that this tobacco is sweet. Okay, has a sweet smell to it. Okay, and it just explodes and the amount of money, because when they ship it back to England, it becomes very popular. And because it's a habit forming, it's almost a drug. It is a drug. At that time, they didn't know that, of course. They became addicted to it. They became addicted to this sweet smelling tobacco, which means people like John Rolfe, and you saw the video, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson were able to make a ton of money. See here, colonists soon discovered that England would pay more for the sweet scented tobacco. They decided to grow more and more tobacco because they're making money off of it. Okay, look at the jump here. 1616, they exported 2,300 pounds of tobacco. 2 years later, 50,000 pounds. Went up. I mean, think about how many times that went up. A lot. It went up 25 times, basically, okay, in just a 2-year period, okay? And, of course, he's also famous for another reason, because he married Pocahontas, okay? So here's the next video that I'd like you to watch, talking more about the value of tobacco. Oops.
Coming from Scandinavia or from Northern Europe with flaxseed sewn in their pockets, or grain from great crops that they grown there, and they brought them here to start what became the greatest agricultural economy in the world.
Tobacco is the leading edge of colonial commerce. It's a cash crop. It produces tremendous value in exchange for significant but bearable investments of land and labor. And the demand for tobacco is immense. It's like a drug. If you're thinking about tobacco, think cocaine.
And cocaine is just a drug that's
The
very
amusing thing
addictive.
is that it actually took quite a number of years to establish the legitimacy of tobacco because King James I disapproved of the use of tobacco. He thought it was unhealthy.
One of the
Right.
things about growing tobacco is it's labor intensive. And for a lot of reasons, it was difficult to maintain a white labor force, a free labor force, to do the kind of grunt labor that tobacco culture requires. For one thing, it's too easy for white indentured servants to run away.
Indentured
And
servants.
so you begin importing Africans, initially as indentured servants, that is,
Because think about it, an indentured servant, like we already learned, they would work for 5 or 6 years and then they would get their freedom. The reason they worked for 5 or 6 years is so they could get over to the New World. Well, think about it. If they are basically going to work for the plantation owner to repay him for coming over, well, if he just runs away, okay, from that plantation, then he's already gotten what he wanted, which is over to the new world. Okay, it's almost like giving somebody money before you are able to get what you're trying to buy. Okay, that person could take your money and just not give you anything. So the indentured servants, some of them would do is they'd say, "Okay, I'll work for you 5 or 7 years if you take me over." They took them over, and then they ran away. Okay, with slaves, okay, they were property. Okay, so they didn't want to come over here. They were forced to come over.
as people who are bound for a time to serve a master. But it soon becomes more convenient, economically speaking, to hold these people as slaves.
There was too much land to work when they came to the colonies, so they brought the slaves over to do that work, and they didn't want to pay them. So how did they rationalize it? They go, oh, we don't have to pay them because they're black. It's genius on one hand, but it's also insane.
To be able to make Tobacco Road and not pay for the service made America competitive in the world economic market, because you have not only low wage workers, you have no wage workers. So now you can compete and produce product without having to pay the labor cost of it. So it is a good business venture. Aside from the questions of human rights and racism, it's just good business.
I mean, think about it. You can have people work for you for free. So that means whatever money you make, you just keep it. I mean, the person who was just speaking, an African American, even acknowledges that although it's awful that they had slavery at that time, it just is a good business decision. Okay, to get away from the indentured servants or people you pay, and just use slaves. Okay, so what I'd like you to do next is here you can see that how did colonists use tobacco as money? Basically, this is a storehouse. Okay, and this storehouse is almost like a bank. All right, so what you would do is, it's very interesting, is that you would take the leaves from the tobacco and you bring it to the storehouse, which is like a bank. It's like a savings account. And it's really interesting is that you get these letters of currency. So the person who has this, that's letting you store your tobacco in there, they'll give you money that you can use, just like a savings account. Okay, and basically they let it sit in there until it dried, and they would take it back. Okay, you can see here, do you see how there's little holes in between the wood here? That's done on purpose. You can see up here how it's open. Okay, here it's open here. You think like, oh, that's kind of weird. Why is it open up there? Obviously, you're not going to, have the door be at the top. It's to allow the wind to come in to basically dry out the tobacco. Because when you would smoke it, you couldn't smoke it when it was wet. Okay, you need to smoke it when it was dry. So I'm going to have you make a foldable on basically the economic terms that we had put in our notebooks at one time, as well as some colonial facts. Now, you don't really have to do a whole lot in terms of coloring, and you don't actually have to write anything either. It is takes a little bit to put together, though. We put one like this together a while back when we were making the looking at the Native American tribes, and we made like a little booklet with a pouch in it, and there were two parts to the pouch. There were the Tidewater plain Native Americans, and then there were the others. It's going to be the same thing. Okay, so you're making the same type of booklet. I have purple paper up front. I have the cards that you're going to be putting inside of your piece of paper, and yeah, that's about it. Yeah, you're going to make that. Look at mine as an example. And if you have any questions on how to do that, look at the pictures that I have posted, as well as you can help one another kind of how to build it. If you do finish all of that and you finished everything up to this point, you can play this game, which is your captain of the Jamestown colony. Will your colony survive or perish? It's really fun. Basically, they give you decisions that you have to make, and based on those decisions, you find out if your colony would actually survive. Okay? Make sure that you do a good job cleaning up. Yesterday I came in, there were papers all over on the front table. I threw away a couple that were already made. Okay, so again, if I find anything laying around, I'm throwing it away because I don't have time to figure out whose they are.